Now we pivot to the main topic for today, and it comes to us from Houston, where the Texans don't get nearly enough attention because they stink. In an effort, possibly, to not stink down the stretch, they have decided to make a quarterback change. Here is head coach David Culley naming rookie Davis Mills the starting quarterback for the rest of the season.
I guess everybody want to know who the quarterback's going to be on Sunday, and it'll be Davis. Davis will be the quarterback on Sunday.
What led to your decision?
Well, I felt like he gives us the best chance to win. And going forward, he'll be the quarterback.
Spoken like a guy who didn't make the decision. Because there's no big decisions like that are being made by the head coach. They're being made above him. Now, whether it's Nick Caserio, Jack Easterby, Cal McNair, some combination of the three, I don't know. But, Myles, my first thought when I saw this, they're tanking. And yes. I have no problem with them tanking. I have no problem with it because it's a clear incentive. The way the draft order is set up, there's no draft lottery in the NFL. We can talk about that in a minute. There is a clear, bright line incentive, temptation, motivation when you know you're done. And they're done. They've been done. There's 4 teams right now that are done. When you know you're done, oh, and by the way, the Lions picked up a win, and if they just get one more, they're going to be above us because they got a tie. They're going to be 2-14-1. We're going to be 2-15. We can secure that spot, and we play the Jaguars again, who have 2 wins on the season. We can lose that game. They win that game. They go to 3. We stay at 2. Easy math for me to figure out. There's an incentive to do it because there's more value in having the high pick. You get your dibs on who you want. It can change the fortunes of a franchise to have that first overall pick. And the NFL refuses to acknowledge even the mere temptation to lose late in the regular season in the name of winning the next year, the next year, the next year, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. Well, and that's the thing about, getting these draft picks and tanking and all these different types of things, especially with the Texans, who haven't been able to get a high pick in a while because of those trades that they made when Bill O'Brien was still there. And that was kind of the thing that we were talking about last year when they got Nick Caserio and then hired David Culley. It was like, okay, well, what are they going to do in order to really try to start improving that roster? So they now are going to have a chance to do it. Now, it's still so early, and because, I focus all my time on the NFL, I don't know exactly who they'd be tanking for. I know I've seen some stuff about that Michigan defensive end, and he's very good, but I don't necessarily think it's just about the player that they could get with the first overall pick. It's also, all right, if maybe, say, somebody wants to jump up to that number 1 overall pick, who could they then trade down and get? And not just in the first round, but then you go into those later rounds, the higher pick you have, the more draft capital you have, and the more you can say, all right, well, I'm going to go down, in the 3rd round to, let's call it the middle of the round, and somebody else is going to trade up, but then they're going to give me not just this 3rd round pick for this year, but maybe also a 4th round pick or another 5. You just are able to kind of stack picks and get more players in the building that way. So I understand what they're doing from a team building standpoint right now. The best chance to win does not necessarily mean from weeks 14 through 18 this season. It could mean, from down the road into 2022, 2023 and beyond that.
And you make a great point. If you secure that number 1 pick, it's not just round 1. It's 2 through 7. It's the first pick in round 2 after all of the picks have been made in round 1. And there's like 18 hours until round 2 starts again. And you can open the market for bidding on that top pick in round 2. You do the same thing round 4. After rounds 2 and 3, you have overnight for offers to be made, deals to be done. It's a huge asset. And there's value in having that asset. And it's one of the things about me, or about not about me, but about the NFL that fascinates me. There are a few things about me that fascinate me. There is one thing about the NFL among many that fascinate me, and that is the fact that the NFL refuses to even entertain the idea that this happens. And it happened in the final regular season game in 2014. The Buccaneers were leading the Saints by double digits. They wanted to nail down the rights to Jameis Winston. That's the guy they wanted. They removed half their starters, and they lost the game to the Saints. And by losing to the Saints in a meaningless Week 17 game, they won the rights to Jameis Winston. And, I've made that argument, and it's plain as day. And I've said it, and people say, well, Winston ended up stinking. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that the guy they wanted was good. The point is, that's what they wanted, that's what they did, and they went and got him, and it happens. And it's not about asking the players to lay down. It's about putting players on the field that aren't good. Myles, if they signed me to play quarterback on Sunday, I would go out and try my damnedest to win, and I wouldn't. But I'm not tanking. But them being stupid enough to let me play is tanking.
Yes. Well, it happened more recently than 2014. I mean, we can go to last year in that last game of the season that the Eagles played, right, where they end up putting in Nate Sudfeld, I believe is the man's name. I apologize if I'm not getting that right. Yeah, okay, so they put in Sudfeld in the second half instead of Jalen Hurts, and it's kind of like, well, wait a minute, what the hell is going on here? And that's basically what's happening. They are trying to lose in some way so that they get the rights to a higher pick. Again, not just in round one, but then everywhere else going forward. So again, I don't think Davis Mills is just out there just because well, we know we suck and we can't win any games or and we don't actually believe in him. And it's also an audition for him. And yeah, the more experience he gets right now, also the better backup quarterback he's going to be going forward. So they still have him under contract for 3 more years beyond this season. Whether or not they get their quarterback conundrum, if you want to call it that, solved in this offseason or beyond, they're going to have something with Davis Mills where you can at least put him out there and he can effectively run the offense. Is he going to be a prolific guy? Is he going to turn into somebody like Kirk Cousins, for instance? Probably not, at least not based on the early returns. But at least you have a guy out there with some experience who can come in a backup situation.
And look, those are all ways that they can sell what they're doing with a straight face. But to the extent that it does position them to get the highest pick in the draft, that's a good thing. That's a positive that comes out of this. They're not going to run the table with Davis Mills. We saw what they're going to do with Davis Mills. They have a better chance to win with Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor's not the future. They got to figure out what they're going to do with Davis Mills. And they have the separate asset of Deshaun Watson's contract that they need to figure out what to do with in the offseason. So Nick Caserio trying to turn this team around, willing to take the hits now, because who really cares? And I've said this before. Once you know you're not making the playoffs, who cares? You win by losing. The NFL hates even entertaining that idea. Myles, I think they don't have a draft lottery in the NFL, which could become a huge offseason tentpole event. Currently, we have scouting combine, free agency, and the draft. They tried to make the start of training camp into a thing this year. Good luck with that. A draft lottery would be huge. A draft lottery would be compelling. But what a draft lottery does, especially if they do it based on you get more chances if you are worse and fewer chances if you're better. Let's say they would do the 20, it's not 20 anymore, it's 18 non-playoff teams. You acknowledge that there's an incentive to enhance your standing for the draft lottery. They're blurring the line now as it is. The line becomes unblurred if you have a draft lottery. That's why they'll never do it, even though it would be a great business move for them to have a draft lottery. And I suspect there have been people in that league office over the years that have said, hey, we want to make more money. This is free money. What are the production costs of a studio? We have a studio. We bring in a one of those lottery machines and we put the ping pong balls in and off we go. We can name our price for that thing.
Yeah, that's probably true. I mean, it would be interesting. I mean, the people get really into the NBA draft lottery. I really don't. Maybe I should, since I, have Cavs gear behind me, I think. But I feel like in some ways it would make things a lot different, just because is it really fair whatever, to have a team that is just barely missing the playoffs, right? Still have a good chance or a chance at all at the number 1 overall pick without having to surrender some other type of asset, right? That's what made that trade that the Rams made to get up to number 1 for Jared Goff so unique, was because they were jumping all the way up from 15 to number 1, and teams don't really get to do that. So what they had to do was trade multiple first-round picks, trade other picks within that draft in 16 so that they could have the shot at getting up to number 1, because that was a 7-9 team that was going up to number one, which was the Titans were either 2-4, 3-13, and 15. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. So it's just one of those things where it would really kind of change the way teams have to evaluate not only their own players, but what their chances are on the season, I feel like.
I think that a draft lottery would be incredibly compelling for the NFL because as much interest as there is in the draft, and the NFL draft draws much more interest than any of the other drafts combined. You could put
Absolutely.
them all in and it's still nothing close to the NFL draft.
Yep.
I've wrestled with the idea of what a draft lottery would look like. Should all 32 teams have equal shot at getting the first pick? That would definitely remove any and all temptation to ever tank. At a minimum, the non-playoff teams, because no one's going to say, hey, we're probably going to get our asses kicked in the first round of the playoffs. Let's just go ahead and not make the playoffs, and maybe we get a shot at getting the first overall pick in the draft. I don't think anybody would have the temptation to not make the playoffs. I think that would be ludicrous. But I'd like to think that they'd come up with something that would eliminate the temptation to tank so all the games would have the full and complete integrity. And this is where it comes down to the influence of gambling. I think it's imperative that the NFL remove any temptation to not put your best foot forward, to have a switcheroo in the middle of a game. At least the Texans are doing it in a way that it does protect the integrity of the gambling because everybody knows it's Davis Mills. Everybody knows. It's not going to be Davis Mills' second half because, we may win this game. No. We need to evaluate Davis Mills for the final two quarters so we don't actually win the game. So if you're letting everyone know ahead of time, I think that's a way to deal with the potential gambling concern because then Vegas can set the lines and the other prop bets the right way. But I think that's part of it too, Myles. You ultimately want to have every team in a position to try to win every game, to have no temptation to not win every game. And you want to do that to further support the notion that you do have integrity, not just in your games, but in your bets.
That's interesting of a phrase, right? The integrity of gambling. It's not something that people probably ever think about. Integrity and gambling kind of seem like two very disconnected terms. But yeah, if you want to have people bet on things, and everybody obviously does, there's a lot of money in sports betting, as we can continue to see by some of the contracts that these places are handing out to different outlets, right? So I think it's interesting when you put it that way, because you want to make sure that every week people have something reliable to bet on, and it's not just something ridiculous that then we're going to be talking about, on this show, on different shows that people have on different media outlets, where it's like, oh my gosh, can you believe what happened? And oh my gosh, all this money that's now doing different things than it probably should have, because these teams decided to do one thing when they could have done another. But when you go back to it, right, it's just the draft in general is just one of these things. And I think we talked about this, back in the spring in March and April, where it's a little bit un-American, where you don't have any say when you're a young player of where exactly you're going to go. And Kyler Murray kind of brought that up this week when he was talking about facing Aaron Donald, where he started to say, it's what I signed up for. And he's like, well, wait a minute. I didn't actually sign up for it. But, when you get drafted to the NFC West, that's the first thing that you think of is, oh my gosh, Aaron Donald's going to chase me around twice a year.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.